record this session. So now we are recording. Good evening, everyone. My name is Elida Van Almelo. I'm the Executive Director of the Valley Mountain Bikers and Hikers. I'm delighted to welcome everyone here this evening to the Matanuska Greenbelt Stakeholder meeting. I want to thank our stakeholders for taking the time to share your perspective on what's happening at the Greenbelt right now. I'd also like to thank UA Interim President Pat Pitney, UAF Chancellor Dan White, UAF Vice Chancellor Julie Queen, UA Regent Member Cache Garrett, and the Matanuska Experiment Farm and Extension Center Director Jody Anderson for taking the time to hear our testimonies and engage in a conversation this evening. I also want to thank the Mat-Su Health Foundation for sponsoring our advocacy efforts. They have made it possible for us to hire a third-party facilitator for this evening, host an informational website, and generally engage in productive advocacy efforts. The Matanuska Greenbelt Advocacy Committee came about from a mutual passion across a handful of local organizations to protect and preserve the integrity, connectivity, and character of the Matanuska Greenbelt. We all collectively felt a struggle in getting UA and UAF to engage in a productive conversation around the issue, so we decided to create that opportunity with this meeting. Our committee consists of the Alaska Farmland Trust, Mat-Su Trails and Parks Foundation, Mat-Su Backcountry Horsemen, the Matanuska Greenbelt Trails Association, and the Valley Mountain Bikers and Hikers. We planned this stakeholder meeting as a way to engage with as many voices from our community as possible regarding the gravel pit in the heart of the Greenbelt. With this evening's meeting, we hope to share how special this place is to us. We hope to convince UA leadership that the Matanuska Greenbelt is worth preserving, and we hope to engage in a conversation that explores and encourages alternative solutions toward a win-win situation for our community and for the university. Amy?
Thanks, Elida. Good evening, and thank you again all for being here. My name is Amy Pettit, and as you know, I'm the Executive Director of the Alaska Farmland Trust. Later on the agenda, I will testify on behalf of my organization, but for now, I'm speaking to you as a member of this advocacy committee who's been meeting for the past 5 weeks in an effort to make this evening happen. I want to echo Elida's sincere thanks to the members of the university and all of you community members who've taken the time to be here tonight. I heard there was some nationally televised event taking place this evening that might have been a draw for your attention, but as the saying goes, if you want to make a difference in the world, you start at your kitchen table. And so here we all are, many of us at our kitchen tables, coming together to highlight the crown jewel that is the Matanuska Experiment Farm and Extension Center and the Matanuska Greenbelt Trail System. When the excavator rolled onto the property back in August, many people were outraged at the thought of this incredible property being evaluated for gravel extraction. The members of this advocacy committee immediately jumped to action, creating the Save the Matanuska Greenbelt website, gathering testimonials, researching the title and deed transfer, and reaching out to the university and Board of Regents about our concerns. Although Chancellor White, you attended the community council member meeting and the Palmer Chamber meeting, we felt that there was a need to tell our sides of the story, to testify on behalf of the other values that this property holds, and to hopefully discuss alternative solutions to resource extraction other than the mining of gravel. Our advocacy committee consists of representatives from the Mat-Su Trails and Parks Foundation, Matanuska Greenbelt Trails, Mat-Su Backcountry Horsemen, Valley Mountain Bikers and Hikers, and Alaska Farmland Trust. You'll hear from each of us this evening, as well as from a select number of community members who've been engaged in this dialogue and outraged at the potential loss of this asset. Additionally, my colleague Dave Mitchell from the Great Land Trust will speak this evening with specific examples of projects his organization has completed to transfer lands from state ownership into permanent conservation. He will talk to us about funding opportunities and lay the groundwork for future discussions about the permanent protection of this property. Thank you, Dave, for taking time out of your vacation to join us. I also want to recognize our elected officials. Thank you to Senator Shelley Hughes, Representative Delana Johnson, Mat-Su Borough Assemblywoman Stephanie Nowers, and Palmer City Manager John Musi. And finally, thank you to Elizabeth Ripley of the Mat-Su Health Foundation for joining us. To bring all of this together tonight, our committee opted to hire a professional third-party facilitator. We're appreciative that the Mat-Su Health Foundation also recognizes the value in this evening's discussion and sponsored our event costs. Without further ado, I want to introduce Allie Harvey of Information Insights. She'll be facilitating this evening, helping with the behind-the-scenes tech, monitoring the clock, and keeping all of us on track. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Allie.
Excellent. I think that's my cue. Amy and Elida, thank you, and thank you all so much for taking time tonight to be here. I'm Allie Harvey, and I work with a small firm based out of Fairbanks, Information Insights, but I was working remotely before it was cool. I'm here in Palmer. And I know many of you here because, like many of us, I wear many hats as an Alaskan. But to clarify my role here tonight, I am here in the role of third-party facilitator. That means I support you in having a productive evening and having a good meeting. I support us in going through the agenda and respecting your time by sticking to it. And I'm going to be supporting having a good dialogue with the leadership from UA that's present tonight towards the end of the evening, where hopefully we'll be able to identify some next steps. So in short, I'm here not focused on content, but I'm here focused on process. So we, as Elida noted, are recording tonight to make sure that it is available to anybody that cannot be here. And we are also, you might have noticed, live streaming on Facebook. So hi, Facebook. For those that are joining via Facebook, you can leave your comments in the chat. We will be monitoring that throughout the evening and collecting your comments and your questions. So I'm going to briefly review the agenda. First off, you should have received the agenda in advance, but first off, we will hear testimony from leaders across the Mat-Su. To keep things smooth, I will be calling on you when it is your turn to speak if you've prepared testimony for tonight. Please refer to the speaker lineup list that you received and chat me if you did not get that today, and be prepared to unmute yourself when your turn is coming up. We will hear from communities testimonials for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then we will invite UAF leadership to please respond to what you have heard here tonight. And following that, I'll moderate dialogue between UA leadership and community members. And then at 8:30, we will close. So that is the agenda. We do have guidelines for participating that you should have received in the agenda. I'll copy and paste those in a moment into the chat, but a few key ones to note. The big one is to please share airtime. We have about 20 people with prepared testimony, which is great. That is also a lot. And so please, when you're offering your testimony, do not exceed 3 minutes. I'm going to help you by timing each of you, and I will give you the "you have 1 minute left" signal. This is the universal 1 minute left signal when it is your time to please wrap up. Believe me from experience that you think you have a lot of time left of the minute, you don't. So please conclude when I give you that signal, and if you do have additional comments, you are welcome to leave them in the chat. If you agree throughout the meeting with something that's being said, we have these really cool fancy tools on Zoom. On the low bar, if you hover, you should see something come up that says reactions. You can do a thumbs up, you can do a clap, you can do a heart. But I encourage you, if you agree with something that's being said, want to underscore it, please use that freely. And if you have comments and questions throughout, please use the chat feature in Zoom or on Facebook Live. The advocacy committee will be selecting questions to raise towards the end of the evening with the dialogue with UA leadership. And then finally, I invite everybody who was willing and able to please participate via video. Weird times, we all wish we were in one big room together. That's the best way I can think of to approximate that feeling. So if you're willing and able, please turn on your video. So without further ado, I'd love to invite our first speaker, Elizabeth Ripley with the Mat-Su Health Foundation. Would you like to kick us off?
Yes, thank you, Allie. Good evening, Interim President Pitney, Chancellor White. Thank you for taking time to hear concerns of Mat-Su residents with respect to our beloved Matanuska Greenbelt. My name is Elizabeth Ripley, and I serve as CEO of the Mat-Su Health Foundation, which shares ownership in Mat-Su Regional Medical Center and invests our share of the profits back into the community through grants and scholarships to measurably improve the health of the Mat-Su population. Education is one of the top 2 determinants of a population's health. The more Mat-Su residents with some higher education, the higher our health status. If we increase the number of people in Mat-Su with some college, we will literally see our diabetes and mortality rates go down. Therefore, we actively support the University of Alaska with contracts for services, project grants, and almost $600,000 in scholarships in 2019 alone. In our workforce development focus area, we incentivize people to move from vocational to professional credentials requiring college. We engage local employers to ensure your students have clinical placements during school and jobs when they graduate. We know you're under pressure to reduce your budget and generate revenue, and we're trying to be a good partner to you in every way possible. Besides education, environment can improve or harm a population's health. We endorse environmental strategies that help people make healthy choices. In every Mat-Su Community Health Needs Assessment, residents said our clean environment, access to wilderness and nature, and outdoor recreation opportunities help them be healthier. Research shows time spent in parks, green spaces, and nature boosts health and well-being. The Matanuska Greenbelt provides this centralized access in the core area of Mat-Su. The foundation granted funds to facilitate this stakeholder meeting to share how the community uses the property, ways the university could generate value outside of gravel extraction, and how we might create a win-win for the university and Mat-Su residents. The last Mat-Su Borough Economic Development Plan clearly states that the future of economic development in Mat-Su is in professional technical services, not resource development. The foundation purchased the 35 acres around Mat-Su Regional 2 years ago. We are drafting a master plan for this property that preserves green space, generates income, and increases access to services that build health and wellness. For the last 4 years, we've discussed creating a medical education district with the borough and university officials across this property, from the hospital to Mat-Su College. Think of the possibilities in this medical education district that also preserves essential green space for our citizens. With all the brilliant minds here, I think we can chart a path forward that generates the needed income for the university and preserves meaningful access to the Matanuska Greenbelt for the health of our citizens. We are happy to work with you toward that end. Thank you for listening.
Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. Next, I'd like to invite Assembly Representative Stephanie Nowers.
Thanks, Elizabeth. It's always a hard act to follow. Agree with much of what was said there. And I also just want to recognize we have one other elected official here, Jill Valerius from the Palmer City Council. So didn't want to leave her off of this illustrious group that we have. Hello, Chancellor White and Vice Chancellor McQueen. It's good to see you again. It's nice to meet you, President Pat Pitney. I don't think we've had a chance to meet in person before. I'm kind of wearing 2 hats tonight. One is as representative of District 2 on the Mat-Su Assembly, represents the greater Palmer area, more than 20,000 residents, and includes the farm and the Greenbelt area. I also speak as a 25-year resident of the area, a huge supporter of the university, the experiment farm, and a user of the Greenbelt. I personally walk those trails every day. I see the large number of users and the diversity from the grandma to the kids to the horseback riders to the dog walkers. I've taken classes at the Mat-Su College. I've reported on the moose research that you've done there with Bill Collins. I've harvested plants with friends at the community garden, taken cooperative extension classes, and participated in those fabulous farm tours. Thanks, Jody. Those are great. So that's all to say there's a lot of value in that property that people are getting out of it. I would echo as a resident and a representative what others say, that this is a real gem. And also what Elizabeth was saying, that I think we have a real opportunity here to make an investment with the community. Like Representative Johnson and Senator Hughes, I've received many calls and feedback on this. And, you know, besides people not wanting a gravel pit in the middle of their trail system, the lack of input solicited from the community has been a big part of that. So I really hope, and I'm optimistic to see you all tonight, that this is going to be the start of a serious discussion between the city and the borough and these stakeholders and the university. And I just want to say, we spent all of yesterday interviewing candidates for the the Matsu Borough Manager position. I see you're one. I'm going to try. Don't mute me. And we have lots of interest from outside. And, you know, no offense to anyone, but they said you have something that we would kill for in terms of attracting businesses, residents, and students. And it's not a gravel pit, and it's not the latest McDonald's. It's that, you know, outdoor scenic beauty. It's the Alaska mystique, and it's the Alaska story. And we've got all that in this property. So, you know, let's capitalize on that. And if you look around at the stakeholders you have tonight, you are crossing so many lines. You've got quality of life people, you've got trails people, you've got the land trust. I can't think of the last meeting I was in where you had this many stakeholders. So I know a lot of times we have problems and we just don't have all the people in the room, but I think we've got that here. And I think we got off on the wrong foot, but I know we can turn around, and it's great to see everyone. And like I said, I really am optimistic that we can start to have a good, serious conversation that I think can go beyond even what we sort of are talking about that kick this off. So I'll stop there. I'll just conclude by saying that I think this is great opportunity. I'm looking forward to the step forward, and thanks to all those who put it together. And special thanks to Chancellor White and McQueen and President Pitney for making yourselves available, and looking forward to hearing more discussion.
Thank you, Stephanie. Well done. I'd like to invite Representative Delana Johnson. Oh, you had it for a sec. You're still on mute.
How about that? All
You're
right,
good.
very good. So I mean, it's just great to be here with a group of people. Some of you I know in person and have for a number of years, and some people that I maybe know by association or reputation, and it's an illustrious group. I'm pleased to be here, and I'm pleased to all of our community members that find this area a precious place. One of the things that I found that makes land use difficult, for some of you may know that I am someone that develops property, but there's these places in the world that are just magical, and sometimes they have competing resources, and we have a number of places like that in Alaska. I was fortunate enough to live close to the area that's in question tonight for a number of years, and spent many wonderful hours there. And so on top of this wonderful resource of gravel that we all need for building things, we also have a phenomenal place that can't be replaced, and is of a value that once it's gone, you can't even describe what was there. It is a magical place. So first of all, I want to say thank you to President Pitney and for being here. And I know that she inherited this. This wasn't something that's been something that was immediately something that she's, came up with the idea. I know she's dealing with it, and I appreciate the value that she brings to this discussion. I don't ever underestimate her desire to do the right thing. And so I really appreciate all of you at the university for being here tonight, along with the student regent and many of the other people here tonight. But I guess I don't want to say, go on too long. I want to hear from other people, but my initial reaction was when I looked into the executive order when the United States federal government removed this land from the public lands and put it in the public trust with the USDA in, I believe, 1917 as an executive order by President Wilson. Even then, the research on that property, the research for the where does the land, where's the growing, where's the agriculture the best in Alaska was the area in question that we're talking about. And I think that that's important that they identified that then. I don't think that that has changed over time. That was just as wonderful then as it is now. And I think as we move forward, I think that becomes a bit of a basis for as we move forward, just this enduring value that this land has had over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. Next, I'd like to invite Senator Shelley Hughes.
Thank you. And thank you. I won't repeat the kudos. I'd like to hopefully yield some time because I am here to listen. But I just want to say, you know, I've lived along Trunk Road for 30 years, and it is absolutely a treasure, the area that's in question. But a dozen years before that, I remember spending time at one of the little houses that were part of the experimental farm where my brother lived, and some little nieces, babies were born. And so it goes back, you know, 40 plus years, the area. And someone mentioned we're coming around the kitchen table and having a conversation. I'm literally at my kitchen table. And I know it's been the desire of many stakeholders to have a sit down with the landed division, and it's happening. And so I just want to say I'm really proud of all the stakeholders and the fact that it wasn't just pushback from what the university was doing, but a desire of the stakeholders to come forward with solutions. And there is economic value to have an area like this in the center of what has become a growing population. So I understand that, but the desire to have a win-win situation. At the same time, I understand the rock and the hard place that the university is in right now. With the funding shortfall. But I also know I was reviewing the most recent comprehensive annual financial report, which we call the CAFRA. And the University of Alaska right now, their net position overall, all campuses, is $1.8 billion. I also know at the same time there's about 360,000 acres of a land grant deficit that we are still owed. And so that is one of the focuses I think we need to push, is to get the remainder of those acres. Very important. I appreciate all the input. It was unfortunate the way this was rolled out, and I like what Stephanie said about we're getting back on our feet on this, and it's okay, and we can be forgiving and give some grace. But I hope again that in the future, that when work starts on something, we won't find out the same day. I found out the evening that the day of the equipment was going out. So I look forward to open door communication with the university and a chance for the community to weigh in. And I believe that that this farm, the farmland can be actually revenue generating. It can be a good asset and not a drain on the university system. If we all work together, we can do that. So it's beneficial to the agricultural community and well as to our community overall. And I'm going to throw in one thing. Since our meeting, our legislative briefing, and the Gateway Community Council, the Palmer Chamber Communities Council, and that is that the Alaska to Alberta rail line presidential permit has since been signed. That is going to open up an economies of scale for agriculture, for moving products in and out, and particularly to the Asian market. So that just gives one more reason, I believe, why this area is really important. We're going to need the research potential on this property. So with that, I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. City Manager John Moosey.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me. As a city manager of City of Palmer, I'm in month number 4 with the city, and the experimental farm is very important to the Palmer history and our history of agriculture. It is a valuable location and a valuable piece of property, and it has some very positive impacts leading into the City of Palmer. As manager, I'm very concerned with the aesthetics of any development or any use, and also too the increased gravel traffic. City of Palmer really relies on visitors and tourists coming into our community, and that's very important. So I want to say I was very surprised with the gravel extraction potential project. And the reason, my past association as borough manager with the Matsu Borough, I've made past attempts to talk to UAF land folks about private business partnerships that we had, and were completely shut down. They did not want to hear any opportunities that may arise. 3 years ago, former governor came to me with a private partnership in this area, since it's a key spot. And I said, I'd be glad to meet, but I said, I will not get any response from UAF. They will not talk to me about anything regarding economic development. So there is tremendous opportunity that would benefit everybody. And I really think that looking at gravel, number one, messes the opportunity, but you're looking at pennies compared to dollars. There is a tremendous opportunity economic that would benefit everybody, especially UAF. You have the medical center there, you have the Matsu College, you have the experimental farm. It is a really gem of a location. So I encourage you to look at all opportunities and not go for the quick buck. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Next is Wes Hoskins with the Matsu Trails and Parks Foundation.
Thank you so much to the people and organizations who have made this meeting possible, and to UA and UAF Leadership for taking the time to hear our voices in this venue. I'm Wes Hoskins, Executive Director of the Matsu Trails and Parks Foundation. We are a grant-making organization which strives to be the catalyst for trails and park improvement in the Matsu Borough. Although I am speaking tonight as a representative of the Matsu Trails and Parks Foundation, I'm also speaking to you as a Greenbelt user. Whenever I begin a run or a bike at a Greenbelt trailhead, which is multiple times a week, I'm struck by the kinds of users taking off on their own adventures, no matter the seasons or conditions. There may be someone with a bucket and a fishing pole, a family with a pair of golden retrievers, horse riders, a fat tire cyclist, a group of skiers. And for those seeking death-defying adventure, there's always the sledding hill at Crevasse Moraine. We are all accessing 33 miles of trails in a space of uninterrupted farmlands and forests, bounded by trailheads in all cardinal directions. This Central Park is the most accessible recreational gem in the valley. The Matsu Trails and Parks Foundation believes the Greenbelt would be significantly impacted by a gravel pit installed in the middle of this gem. I believe this is a question of investment. As a leader of an organization that makes grants to Matsu communities to build out trails and parks, including the Greenbelt, I think about investment every day in the work that I do. Is the value of a gravel pit in the heart of the Greenbelt greater than the economic value created by recreation areas and green spaces? Is it greater than the value of the health of our community? The development of a gravel pit in the Greenbelt is a short-term solution to a problem that requires a long-term strategy. We are asking that you look at investing in long-term solutions for the people of the Matsu. Your 2019 long-range plan for the experiment farm and UA-owned lands lists numerous short and long-term action items that focus on public outreach and community collaboration. Developing a gravel pit in the middle of the Greenbelt will surely harm public sentiment and undo progress made on your plans that involve the local community. No matter the total value of the gravel resources on the farm and the trails, this resource's value is finite. The value of this land to our community is infinite. The people of this community are the Matsu Experiment Farm's greatest renewable resource. I ask that you work with the Greenbelt Advocacy Group to find a solution that will benefit the needs of the university and invest in the long-term health and wellness of Valley residents. Thank you for hearing us.
Thank you, Wes. Now to introduce Dot Helm with the Matanuska Greenbelt Trails.
Hi, I'm pretty sure most of you know what the Greenbelt is, but just to clarify, it's the huge green hole in the core area of the borough. It's shrinking from the edges as owners expand their uses, but it's been used for recreation, health benefits, and all kinds of things for decades. Most of the area was unsigned and unmapped, so getting lost was a major issue. And there was major disruptions like in 2003, 2006 area between transmission lines and sewer lines and all kinds of things. And this is a time period when a lot of the trail users started to form organizations. But what we tried to do was to connect the pieces. And so we asked the farm if they would entertain a mountain bike race, which was intended to go through all the properties, kind of like the New York City Marathon, showing off the various boroughs. And they said yes. The dean was emphatic about in supporting it. It had the benefit of getting owners to talk with each other and get users familiar with the different properties, show off the lands and the diversity of the trails and topography there. But what was different about this, we wanted to give something back to the owners, not just, we didn't want to just go and have a race. So we each had a something we wanted to offer in terms of like building trails, maintaining something. And since we can't really do something on the farm per se, their thing was to offer their long-term plan, which was supposed to be done in June of that year, 2005. But I think they just got it done December 2019. Whatever. The race was successful, and in later years, we scheduled it during colony days to emphasize get more input with the general public and combine with the agricultural history of the area. We used local ice cream and provided participants with maps of the area, which were greeted with cheers, because up to that time, there hadn't been anything worthwhile. There were some things, partial maps, but most of them didn't make any sense. In December 2008, we had a brown bag lunch at the farm where the ranger from the state parks offered a presentation on the educational aspects of the state parks. At that meeting, it was decided that we would call it Matanuska Greenbelt name because it was short and it had been used for a while. It evolved as we learned. Users, owners, emergency services, databases. The owners did not want anything in writing until they saw how they could work together. And over time, we developed more relationships, and we needed to get some glue to hold things together. Like the Job Corps helped us with the trailheads and provided them an education experience as well as helping us get some labor done that we wouldn't have been able to do easily otherwise. And then in 2011, the Matsu Convention and Visitor Bureau gave us an award, and the University of Alaska Anchorage gave us an award the next year for getting people to talk together. And that's been the history of our area. Pretty much where we've had the best success is getting people talking with each other. And we had some educational stuff, was a Know Your Greenbelt. We're kind of linked in with some other areas. And there's a number of things that we lost when there was the closure. And then just, of course, some things they were started by the farm themselves. Some were started by the Macatons Elementary School. Some were started by users, whatever. So, and thank you.
Thank you, Dot. All right, Don Vaught with the Matsu Backcountry Horsemen, please.
Good evening. My name is Dawn Viat. I'm president of the Matsu Backcountry Horsemen's Association. The Backcountry Horsemen Association mission is to protect natural land resources. We are dedicated to preserving local and backcountry trails, ensuring that they remain open to the public. The Matanuska Valley continues to be one of the fastest growing areas in the nation. This has resulted in much of our agricultural land being developed into both residential and commercial properties. As a result, we have continued to lose viable trails. The Greenbelt is one of the few remaining safe areas in which our equestrian community can still ride. Many of our trails used previously are now dominated by motorized traffic, resulting in rutted trails and high-speed encounters with ATVs, motorcycles, and 4x4 trucks. The Greenbelt provides us with a combination of trails for all riding and horse training levels not available anywhere else in the valley. The proposed gravel pit would be in the dead center of the trails that we currently can safely ride. Our association has donated countless volunteer hours to maintain the trails within the Greenbelt. We consider the Greenbelt our gem, providing not only the equestrian community a safe place in which to recreate, but also hikers, bikers, runners, and walkers of all ages and abilities. As mentioned previously, the development of the gravel pit would destroy the continuity of the partner trails of the state, university, and private lands. We currently have 3 gravel pits on each side of the Greenbelt. We don't need more gravel. We need you to work with our advocacy group to come up with other solutions, as there is no way to undo the damage once it has occurred and is taken away not only from our generation, but for future generations. We ask that you take the time to explore the area in question, talk to the trail users while they're out there, work with our advocacy groups to come up with long-term solutions. Again, thank you again for your time that you have given us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Invite Elida von Almelo.
Thanks, Allie. Hi again, I'm Elida van Almelo, speaking on behalf of the Valley Mountain Bikers and Hikers, or VMBA for short. VMBA is a local trail building and trail advocacy nonprofit organization here in the Mat-Su Valley that currently reaches over 860 unique local outdoor enthusiasts. It is VMBA's duty to make available safe, sustainable opportunities to recreate and in turn instill a sense of environmental stewardship and a lifelong pursuit of healthy living within our community. Our incredibly popular kids mountain biking program, Sprott Kids, depends on the easy terrain and wider trails of the Greenbelt to start new riders out with confidence and control. And our Thursday night run series hosts about 50 fun runners and walkers a week on various trails throughout the valley, but the Greenbelt editions always draw the largest turnout. In August, Alaska State Parks allowed us to set up a trail counter system on the state park trails adjacent to the farm. And as of Monday of this week, an average of 112 unique passes per day have been made on just one of those trails, with monthly totals well over 3,000. VMBA has been responsible for the construction and maintenance of several sustainable trails in the Matanuska Greenbelt Trail system. Last summer, VMBA hosted nearly 500 hours of volunteer labor maintaining trails for the community. And over the course of a few years, one exceptional volunteer has accounted for 500 volunteer hours alone just on the Greenbelt. Palmer is close to the mountains. Most trails here are relentlessly steep and aim to reach the summits that tower above our community. But the Matanuska Greenbelt is a unique haven in which users can run, walk, bike, ski, snowshoe, or horseback ride for miles without severely steep elevation gain. The Greenbelt trails are all interconnected and accessible by trailheads through borough, state, university, and private lands, and placing a gravel pit in the middle would completely unravel the trail system. It would affect every outdoor recreationist in the Mat-Su Valley, the casual dog walker, the serious high school student athlete, the person with physical limitations looking for smooth trails with gentle grades, the adolescent mountain biker picking up a lifelong healthy habit, and many, many more. I do want to state that our advocacy for protecting the Greenbelt does not come from an opposition to a well-funded University of Alaska, but rather we wish as stakeholders to be involved in pursuing alternative options that won't sacrifice the health and well-being of our community, nor the character and integrity of this special place. Thank you for hearing us.
Thank you, Elida. I'd like to invite Amy Pettit with the Alaska Farmland Trust.
Thank you. Thank you again for joining us this evening. My name is Amy Pettit, and I'm the Executive Director of the Alaska Farmland Trust. I was born and raised on a beef cattle operation on the southern Oregon coast. I grew up planning to take over my dad's ranch and become the 5th generation of the Knapp family to make our living raising high-quality grass hay and beef. I was imported to Alaska in 2005 by my then husband, a lifelong resident of Palmer and 3rd-generation Alaskan. I'm so thankful that I've been lucky enough to spend the last 15 years raising my family in this town. Palmer is a special place. My home sits less than 2 miles from the farm, and every morning as I drive through the area, I remind my daughters how lucky they are to be growing up here. I say to them, do you know that some people have never seen mountains like this before? And do you know that some people will never see mountains like this? You girls are so lucky. The Matanuska Experiment Farm and Extension Center is a special place. I'm here tonight to encourage you to do whatever it takes to keep it that way. The mission of the Trust is the permanent protection of Alaska's limited viable agricultural soils. My board of directors submitted a resolution back in September affirming our commitment to helping you permanently protect this property. The Farm and Extension Center is an irreplaceable asset to our agriculture industry. Did you know that 1 in 5 Alaskans is food insecure? Did you know that 98% of the food consumed in Alaska is imported from the lower 48? Have you ever been in a grocery store when the shelves are empty? When the produce section is barren of anything fresh? Although the budget of the Farm and Extension Center has been whittled away to next to nothing, the few remaining staff are having a huge impact on our industry and our community. Are you familiar with the TILF program managed at the Experiment Farm and Extension Center? I ask you all to make a note to go look them up. The TILF program distributed over 10,000 pounds of food to families and groups in need last month, including vegetables in over 70,000 Kids Covered meals this summer. Kids Covered is another program you should know about and support. There has never been a greater need for locally grown food. Not only do the statistics indicate that we are a food insecure state, but this pandemic has shown that we truly are at the end of the road. When Idaho stopped shipping potatoes to Alaska in March, what did the grocery stores do? How did they fill the shelves? They did not call Anchorage Sand and Gravel. From 2012 to 2017, the agriculture industry in Alaska saw a 30% growth in the number of farms in our state. We now lead the nation in new and beginning farmers. We lead the nation in female farmers. The deed to the title of the Matanuska Experiment Farm and Extension Center restricts the use of the property to research and expansion of agriculture. The powers that be knew that this place would play a crucial role in developing our agriculture industry, and they recognized that this place was special. We are at a critical time in history when our agriculture industry and our community needs the support of this farm. I urge you to reconsider your plan to extract gravel from this property and meet with our advocacy committee to explore other options. One of our slogans at Alaska Farmland Trust is, because you cannot eat a subdivision. And I can assure you, you also cannot eat a gravel pit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amy. Jill Valerius, a local business owner and trail user and physician.
Thank you. Thank you to UAF and UAA administration for giving us your time this evening. I am Jill Valerius. I am a physician, a business owner, and a resident here in Palmer. I also happen to be a city council member currently. So to say I'm invested in my community is probably an understatement. And when I think about the Greenbelt, my first thought is all of those trails, you know, beyond the space. I have been on those trails for all 17 years that I've lived here on foot, bike, snowshoes, skis, and with a Pulaski in my hand making trails. So the trails have been very important to me, to the development of my lifelong friendships that I have here now. As a functional medicine physician focused on health, certainly opportunities for people to be out of doors safely is really key to our health and wellness. And I think that most people would anticipate a response like that from me as a physician, but I also want to stress the connection, and Ms. Ripley discussed this as well, between our health and the health of our environment. Undeveloped areas are essential to our health of our state, to our country, as well as globally. I get asked, and I think a lot of people have heard, you know, how is it that COVID isn't so bad here? And really, you know, part of why we have the maybe less severe impact of COVID here is, number one, our population, Number two, our space. You know, we have space. We're not like New York, and we have fresh air, and all of those things are so important. And that's a big part of the reason why we don't have these issues. Again, green spaces are really important for our health. They attract people to an area, they attract business to area, they attract money to our area. And really in Palmer, we really are a tourism hub. I came from Duluth, Minnesota, and if any of you know anything about mountain biking, they are an IMBA Gold Center now. Like the city is. They have 125 connected miles of single track mountain bike trail, in addition to a trail that goes from the south side of Duluth all the way to the Canadian border in the Superior Hiking Trail. So being able to utilize this land as really, truly an investment in our future, I really think it is. I am hopeful that we together can come up with a good use of this land, as well as support the university, because education is so important to, I think, all of us that are here this evening. And we do need to figure out how do we support both our university as well as our global health and the health of our neighbors here. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jill. Russ Johansson with Makatans Land.
Hey, thanks for having me here. Yes, I am Russ Johansson, and I've been asked to speak as a homeowner who borders the Greenbelt, and I live with my wife in the house that Fred and Sarah Makatans built, and we kind of look out and we border the University of Alaska land that the Makatans family graciously donated to the university system, and right on the other side of that is the UAF land. I'm a physician at Matsu Regional in the emergency department, and actually from my house here, I hit the Greenbelt trails and I commute to work at the hospital, and I pretty much don't have to be on a road until the very end. So I use this trail system every day, and up until recently, I was in fact commuting right through the area that just got excavated out, and now I've had to reroute because of the damage done. So that's kind of my background, and that's why I've been asked to speak. And from that standpoint, I have to say I find it quite disappointing that kind of the vision to monetize the university resources and extract them has been so narrow. There's a lot of ways to monetize your land, and there are a lot of ways to extract resources. And I think it's a folly to really focus on the one that's going to harm our community the most. I really can't think of, even my dog doesn't like it. I can't think of anything more destructive to that land than a gravel pit. And so it's pretty disappointing. And I think that UAF can continue its mission on that land without endangering the park-like quality of the land, and also without endangering its standing in the community. Everyone here would really appreciate the consideration of alternatives, and just a few that I can think of, and hopefully the Great Land Trust will be better at this than I, but conservation easements, land swaps, land sales to conservation-minded groups are all options. And I'd like you to consider other options other than extracting gravel. Let's see. You know, I get that you're directed by the legislature to do this, and I get that maybe for the average citizen, the best way to affect or stop this development might be voting. And thank you all of our representatives for being here, because this is an issue that's very important to all of your constituents. But I think, like I said, that UAF land's greater when it's used for its intended purposes. So I just like to finish with the UAF mission statement that I read: to integrate teaching, research, and public service as it educates students for active citizenship and prepares them for lifelong learning. And I don't see how gravel extraction would serve your mission at all. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Russ. I'd like to invite Murph O'Brien, who's a community member and landowner.
Hi, good evening. Murph O'Brien here. I'm a northern neighbor along, got 7 acres that adjoin the property off of the old trunk road. And hello, Chancellor White again, and President Pitney, welcome. The Matsu Experiment Farm is a legacy property, an open space located in the center of the fastest growing area in Alaska. It's a gem. It's a farm, it's a trail system, it's a waterfowl stopover. It has amazing geomorphology and is a valuable community asset. The people who recognized its value as for agricultural research back in the early 20th century were visionary. President Wilson set aside this property for research in 1917. Looking back 100 years, they were on the right side of history. Farming is part of the Valley's birthright. I recognize the university's funding shortfalls and your need to generate revenue. It is a tough situation, and we all own some of the blame for the fiscal problems of the state. Hopefully together we can find some solutions. The farm has been our front yard for 30 years. Thousands of walks, skis, bike rides, countless hours viewing the wildlife and waterfowl. Amazing cold full moon nights spent out owling with my young son, looking for the elusive great horned owls, moose, fox, wolves, bears, coyotes, raptors, snow geese, Canada geese, sandhill cranes, and unfortunately porcupines. We have beagles, and we've spent a lot of money with vet bills. It's truly Palmer's Serengeti. The proposed 75-acre gravel pit is not a one and done proposition. It's at least a 25 years extraction operation of noise, dust, and traffic. In the end, if it does end, Fairbanks will get the money, Anchorage will get the gravel, and Palmer and the Matsu will get another hole in the ground and paradise lost. Some of you are from Fairbanks. Imagine a 75-acre gravel pit in the middle of Kramer's Field, an amazing resource that Fairbanks has in the center of their community. The Greenbelt is our Kramer's Field. We love it. This farm, this legacy resource is worth preserving. Deciding to preserve it today will be looked upon 100 years from now as a positive, forward-thinking decision that will place all involved on the right side of history. I suggest working with all the groups here, the trusts, the different organizations, your neighbors, to figure out a means where the university can receive some funding up front. And maybe there's a means to provide some level of annual cash flow to help your budget. Let's be creative. Let's not lose this unique legacy resource. The farm is valuable and it's a great asset. Let's preserve it. Let's enhance it. Let's be on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you, Murph. Casey Elliott with the Gateway Community Council.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I spoke to you before, and it's good. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak again. My name is Casey Elliott, and like many here, I wear many hats. I'm not just a member of the Gateway Community Council. I'm also a graduate student at UAA in public health. I am also adjunct faculty at the Matsu College. So this particular area is, this is home base for me. And it is, but most importantly, 3 years ago, I became a homeowner in the Canoe Lakes neighborhood, which is one of the closest neighborhoods to this particular property. We're bordered on one side by gravel pits already, and this will put another gravel pit to the north of us as well. And I can tell you, since I've been working from home since the start of the pandemic, I can gravel that low rumble of the gravel pit to the west of us. I hear that every single day, and this would be even closer to me. It is not. What I see at this is that the Gateway area has many things going for it. It has the hospital, it has the college, and it's right there at the front as you go into the valley. And it is both our, and plus it has the experiment farm. It's all the great things about the Valley and things that are looking into the 21st century. Our healthcare that we need to develop and it needs to expand. You've got the college, the educational system that we really need for our students in one of the fastest growing areas in Alaska. We want to attract that 21st century workforce. There's many opportunities for innovation there. And then you have this greenbelt right in the middle of everything that connects the hospital. From my house, I can walk from the trail system over to the college if I want to. And I can tell you during this pandemic, the trail system is what has kept me sane. I can walk out of my house, I can go on the trails, I can get out, and I can come back home and feel refreshed. And there's a lot of places that you can't do that. I never had that growing up. I've lived all over the country. I've lived in cities with 5 million people, and I chose to live here in Palmer because of its agriculture, because of its wonderful work-life balance, the amazing people that are here. And right at the center of that is that experimental farm, is that college, is that hospital area right in there. And that's where the good things are happening. As Amy said, Alaska is the only state where agriculture is growing right now. Every other state in the United States, it is actually shrinking. We have the opportunity to capitalize on that. We have the opportunity to leverage our ecotourism, our wonderful work-life balance, our fabulous mountains and scenery, and these are some of the most accessible trails that we have that can draw the largest number of people. And I would just hope that you would take this opportunity to capitalize on that experimental farm, find new ways of integrating and expanding on what we're already doing to create these 21st century jobs and expand the agriculture that we already have. Because if the pandemic and everything's shown us anything, we need more food in Alaska. We need more farmers in Alaska. And I talked to a farmer the other day and I said, what's the one thing you need? And he said, I need land. I just don't have the land. If I had the land, I could grow the food, but I don't have the land. And so I'm hoping that you will find new ways of developing this area that don't involve a gravel pit, because I can tell you living next to one on the other side is no fun at all. So thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Donna Ray Faulkner and Don McNamara with Oceanside Farms and Ag Cooperators with the Experiment Farm. Donna, if you are speaking, we can't hear you yet. And I am shocked this is the first time that has happened, by the way. Donna, I'm going to troubleshoot with you a bit, and I am going to invite the next speaker who's up, who is Wes Hoskins again, but on behalf of John Harris with Alaskans for Palmer Hay Flats.
Alaskans for Palmer Hay Flats is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to conserving the natural and cultural resources of the Palmer Hay Flats State Game Refuge through public awareness, education, recreation, and enhancement projects. The Palmer Hay Flats State Game Refuge lies south of the Greenbelt and downstream. Its 50 square miles is one of 6 refuges the Palmer Fish and Game Office manages, assuring safe and enjoyable recreation for all citizen users and preserving habitat integrity for the refuge's wildlife. Toward the same, APH has worked with Alaska Department of Fish and Game to construct beneficial developments for the refuge, improved ADA access and parking areas, trail construction and maintenance for education and viewing, shelters and viewing platforms for family gatherings and erosion mitigation, infrastructure for access for health and well-being. For these purposes, the Greenbelt and Hay Flats must be considered as one, only interrupted by the parks and glen highways. Cultural treasures as water are shared between the two and deserve preservation. Even the most generous benefit cost calculation could not find for digging up this beautiful place for the sake of gravel. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Wes, and thanks for being willing to fill in. So Donna and Don, is your mic working?
All right, we're going to try again. Can you hear us now?
Yay! We can.
Yay! All right, thank you, and sorry about that, everybody. Wes, especially, appreciate that. This is Don and Donna Ray, and we live down in Homer. We are farmers, and we can't hear the rumble of the gravel pits from here, but we are worried about it, and we can hear the smart, creative, passionate voices that you are all instilling in this conversation, and you're actually listening to each other. I really appreciate hearing that these days. If you are someone who is able to do reactions, let me ask a couple questions and see if the group can answer with us here. How many of you enjoy healthy, nutritious vegetables and food? Let me see a little clap or hands up or a thumbs up or a heart. Some of you do. Okay, good. Well, hopefully the rest of you will too. How about how many of you want Alaskans to have food security? Most of you again. Okay, good. And and how many of you believe that science and research and great agricultural experts like Jody Anderson can help us to grow better crops throughout Alaska? There you go. And how many of you believe in youth development and developing good farmers and growers and gardeners that can help feed their families and other people around them in Alaska? How many people want to see that more in Alaska? Oh, yay, a bunch of you. That's so good. So all of those things are supported. We live down here in Homer, but your center really helps us to be better farmers. And the guidance that Jody and her staff and everybody share with everybody and have such a welcoming environment and a place for trials and research to happen and collaborations with people and sharing knowledge helps guide our crop choices and our farm plans, and in turn feed a lot of Alaskans. And so that's our goal, and we super appreciate the Mat-Su Experimental Station and your whole unique, beautiful area. We certainly hope that you use all your creative wisdom to come up with some other answers to those challenges that you're having. My husband Don wanted to say a few words as well.
We've never been to the experimental farm, but we've had a couple of visual tours with Jody. Thank you, Jody, for that. And Jody has really helped with our compost knowledge. Just the knowledge at the whole place is unbelievable. Our asparagus crops are going crazy because of Rusty's help there. And I have a hard time with words, but if you planted an apple tree, instead of digging up gravel, an apple tree takes 15 by 15 space. That's 225 square feet. If you get $3 a pound for you pick apples, that's going to be about $12,000 a year. And so even if you said you got $2 a pound, that would be about $9,000 a year. And so gravel's going for about $3 a yard. They're going to have to dig 225 square feet is 8 yards. So they're going to make $24 per every foot they dig deep there. They're going to have to dig 375 feet deep to equal an apple tree. So I think we need more experimental farm, not less. And that's all I got to say about that. Thanks.
Yeah, we appreciate all the collaboration that they do too with the PMC and the Plant Materials Center for those of you who aren't farmers. And they help us to do our Alaska certified seed potatoes here and throughout the valley. Really important crop, and the research and the support that they give us to create a safe, healthy potato crop without all the viruses of the lower 48 is really huge. So thank you for all being here, and we support you all. And good luck.
Thank you both so much. We have a couple folks left on the list before we go into dialogue, and I see, Representative Johnson, that you have your hand up, so I want to offer you time to speak. You might not have meant to put it up.
I think I must have done that by accident in my excitement of trying to raise my hand and respond.
Okay, great.
I have a couple more comments, but I'll wait until we have a chance to do the dialogue.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, of course. Thank you. So up next then we have Mike Chris, who is a community member and photographer. And I think at this point, we are also going to be treated to some visuals. Thank you, Elida.
Yeah, thank goodness pictures are working, because my webcam just went down and I'm not sure what. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Mike Chris. A little bit about myself. I was born in Alaska. I got a degree in electrical engineering from UAF. So I've been in a lot of communities. I've lived in Adak, Fairbanks, North Pole, and for the last 25 years here in the Valley, in Wasilla. I've traveled extensively throughout the state, mostly with my job for the FAA weather cameras. So I've traveled from Barrow to Ketchikan, from Nome to Eagle, and everywhere in between. And when I go to places, I always like to try the trail systems. And some of the best are in the Southeast. I love hiking in Metlakatla, Ketchikan. Juneau has some great trail systems that they're proud of, and they should be. They're well maintained, well traveled, have a lot of variety. But when I come home to the Valley, I realize that our trails are the top in the state. They're hands down the best trail system in the state. My wife and I retired last year and decided to stay here in Wasilla. But for 4 or 5 years, we researched communities down in the lower 48. And one of the things we looked at was trail systems. Every trip we took outside, we'd go visit a community that was on our list and actually try their trails. That's when we realized that our trail systems aren't just the best in the state, they're world-class. We have world-class trail systems here. I take my grandson out once a week hiking on these trails, hoping that he'll appreciate nature and the trails and walking with Grandpa. And I've got to believe that we can come up with a better solution. What do we want to give our grandkids? Do we want to give them world-class trail systems, or do we want to give them a gravel pit? I have to believe that world-class travel or trail systems have to be on top of that list. So thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Mike. Beautiful photos. And then finally, I want to invite Dave Mitchell with the Great Land Trust.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. Hi, my name is Dave Mitchell. I'm the Conservation Director at Great Land Trust. And tonight I'm traveling and have an unstable internet connection, so please forgive me for reading this presentation without video. Great Land Trust is a nonprofit organization. We were founded in 1995 to conserve lands and waters essential to the quality of life and economic health of Alaskans. I've been with GLT for 15 years and have helped many landowners like the university choose conservation as a viable revenue-generating alternative to development. Great Land Trust only works with willing landowners, and we choose projects that are a high priority for the communities we work in. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to briefly go over the options available for a potential conservation project and provide relevant examples of corporate landowners who have worked with us. There's a lot more to say than we have time for tonight, so I hope this is the beginning of a long conversation with the university. The conservation options that most landowners choose are conservation easements and land acquisitions. A conservation easement is a legal agreement that permanently restricts the uses of property. We work directly with the landowner to choose what those restrictions are, and then we purchase the conservation easement at market value. That value is determined by the value of the property before the conservation easement was placed on it and the value of the property after the conservation easement was placed on it. Land acquisitions are different in that the entire property is sold, not just restricted. GLT purchases the property and then donates it to a local entity for ownership and management as open space. GLT has a very strong track record of successful fundraising. Two of the federal funding programs that I want to highlight tonight are the Forest Legacy Program and the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program. The Forest Legacy Program is a federal grant program through the U.S. Forest Service that funds the state of Alaska to conserve important forest areas that are threatened by conversion to non-forest uses. The program funds conservation easements and land acquisitions. Applications are submitted annually by the state, and this year the state can submit up to 3 projects for up to $20 million. There haven't been applications in the past number of years, so that $20 million is going unused. The Agricultural Conservation Easement Program is another federal program that helps landowners protect farmland. This program will contribute up to 50% of the market value of a conservation easement if the community raises the matching 50%. To illustrate how these types of projects play out in the real world, I'd like to share a few success stories. These examples all involve landowners who are in similar pickle to the university, needing to generate revenue from their lands. These examples show how choosing conservation over resource development is a win-win for everyone. First example is Termination Point. This is a property in Kodiak. GLT has worked on conservation deals with many Alaska Native corporations that want to capitalize on the conservation values of their property. Termination Point is a beloved hiking destination just outside of Kodiak. It's 1,000 acre property that has valuable habitat trails and is owned by Lesnoy, as I said, Alaska Native Corporation. When we started working with Lesnoy, they had just completed a large timber harvest and were contemplating moving their contractors to Termination Point to continue cutting. Over the coming years, GLT raised funds to compensate Lesnoy for the value of the timber in exchange for leaving the trees standing. Lesnoy still owns the land, but is now restricted by a conservation easement and managed as a public park by the Kodiak Island Borough. The second example is closer to home. It's the Mat-Su's most popular hiking destination, Bodenberg Butte. GLT recently purchased the butte from the Alaska Mental Health Trust, also a similar mission, trying to generate revenue from their lands. GLT raised funds to purchase the property and donated it to the Mat-Su Borough for management as a park. This effort received terrific press and was a big community effort. And finally, the third example I'll share is a project we completed with Alaska Pacific University. APU sold GLT a conservation easement on Spring Creek Farm that was funded through the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program I mentioned earlier, and with help from the Alaska Farmland Trust. The property remains in APU's ownership to be managed as farmland in perpetuity. That's all I have for my presentation. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to discussing these ideas in more detail.
Great. And thank you so much for being part of this, even with the poor internet connection. And I want to thank everybody for taking the time to hear across multitude of perspectives, to share your perspectives and testimony. That concludes the portion of the formal stakeholder testimony part of the evening. And now I'd like to segue into inviting UA leadership to reply to some of what's been shared tonight, and then opportunity for some dialogue. I know that, just by way of context, the advocacy committee that's been working on this has taken great care to assemble questions that are representative of community interests that have not already been addressed. And I know that those were shared in advance of the meeting. And so after UA leadership has an opportunity to just kind of respond, have the floor and respond to some of what's been shared, I'll be looking to Elida and Wes to kind of pull from that pool of questions, and also if anything's been raised in this chat and on Facebook Live as we've been going. And right before we kick this off, I was remiss before I did not copy and paste the meeting agreements in the chat before, but I'm doing that right now just as a reminder of some good guideposts to guide productive dialogue. And with that, I would like to invite UA leadership to respond to some of what you've heard tonight.
Well, I'll just take a minute and kick it off. First, thank you everyone for all of the time you've spent and your remarks. I think we we are definitely interested in alternatives. Our interest in assessing the gravel resources to find out what the value of this land is, and alternative approaches to monetizing it are certainly very high on our list. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chancellor Dan White. He has the ability to answer all the questions, and I will pick up a few questions here and there if necessary. Also, very pleased that Julie Queen and Michelle Rizek and Jody Anderson and Laura Carmack are with us if we have additional questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chancellor White. And thank you all. I really appreciate all of your perspectives.
Thank you, President Pitney.
Yeah, well, thanks, President Pitney, and thanks to the group. If you didn't, I was giving thumbs ups there, and if I didn't give a thumbs up at your testimony, it was only because I was writing down notes. But all very thoughtful, and I was reflecting at this meeting and actually at the other two meetings that we've had about. I got a call one day from a friend of mine in Palmer, and I got a text that said, "Dan, call me." And I called him up, and he said, "What's the deal with the gravel pit?" And I texted him, or I told him, I said, "What gravel pit?" And he said, "The gravel pit you guys are digging." And I said, "Okay, we're not digging a gravel pit. We're doing a resource assessment." And he said, "You better call Casey Elliott at the Gateway Community Council and talk about what's going on." And he said, but I got to tell you, the people in Palmer are passionate, they're thoughtful, they're creative, and they're considerate. And I have seen that in spades, and I really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the creative solutions that you all have been putting forward. And you know, I'm delighted to meet with the advocacy committee. I think it was after the last meeting that I sent a note to, I think to Amy and Stephanie, but maybe I had the email addresses wrong or something. But happy to meet, get together and talk about alternatives. You know, like I said at our last meeting, you know, UAF is not a mining company. The farm is a farm. The farm is not a mine. Jody's a soil scientist, not a gravel miner. You know, our business is education and research, and it's interesting actually listening to all of you. Of course, our major initiative at UAF is called a research initiative. It's called One Health, and it's based on the indigenous worldview of the connectedness between people, their environment, and the animals. And so we are investing a lot in understanding suicide and abuse patterns and environment and the connectedness of all of those things. And so I think, you know, the things that you're all saying, you know, resonate with me. And I just thinking, Jody, I was in Wiseman. I don't know if any of you have been in Wiseman. It is 271 miles north of Fairbanks in the beautiful Brooks Mountains, and it is also a beautiful place. And as I was getting a tour of Wiseman by a friend there, and he was telling me about his potato patch and the hundreds of pounds of potatoes that he gets out of this potato patch that he feeds the people of Wiseman with. And he was telling me how to dig the trench and this fertilizer and the soil layer and all these things. And he said, "You know where I learned that? Jody Anderson down at the Palmer farm." And so I was thinking if the folks down in Homer also got that from Jody, that Jody, your reach is 850 miles. That's how far it is from Palmer to Wiseman, and that's about as far as you can get in Alaska. So well done. You know, I just some of the comments that I made notes on. I'm not aware of any response, and we were sending notes back and forth trying to figure out what the kind of shutdown, you know, on ideas about economic activity. And I, you know, I get a fair number of emails of people, we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. And I always say, you know, just lift it up a level, because a lot of times it's a misunderstanding or people didn't understand. And if there's ever, you know, you approach UAF lands or UA lands and don't understand or don't kind of get where you need to get, just lift it up a level. And a lot of times there's solutions that people aren't aware of that could be had. I appreciated, I think it was Jill, but I could be wrong, noted the long-term solutions and looking for long-term solutions for the health of the community. And of course, UAF started in 1917. We just celebrated our centennial. And so we are in the business of long-term solutions. And frankly, education is a long-term solution. Amy commented, I think Amy's talking about food insecurity and made the comment that, did you notice what happened when Idaho stopped shipping potatoes? And actually I didn't, because our Fairbanks Fred Meyers just sells Palmer potatoes. So kudos on, you know, to Palmer and food security that we get from that part of our state. So I will also reflect when I'm walking in Kramer's Field, Murph's comments. So thank you for that analogy. The last comment I'd make, we got the list of questions. I know that you wanted responses to these questions before the meeting, but I got them yesterday, and so I have some answers written down here, but I can send you written answers. I just don't have them. We just don't have them finalized up yet here. But one of the last comments, I can't remember. I think it was Mike's. Was, do we want to give a gravel pit to our grandchildren or trails? And you know, from our perspective, we want to give them, we want our grandchildren to have an education and opportunity for post-secondary education, and that's our business. So we are open, you know, to solutions. Obviously, what happens here is we do this assessment, so we have value associated with that. We look at alternatives. UAF, we will be looking for whatever alternatives there are. This, you know, as I mentioned before, and I don't, you know, as part of the compact, we are looking at resources, and the borough or the Board of Regents. Then we propose alternatives to the Board of Regents. The board, anytime there's a land use change, the board has a decision to make. The board has a 30-day public comment period associated with any land use change, but we want to give them the best alternative. So we'll be looking for the win-win, just like you are. But ultimately the board decides, and I know the board has heard a lot. I've got a lot of emails, and I appreciate the emails that I've gotten. I especially appreciate the personal emails because they're impactful, and I know the board has gotten a lot of those. So we would, you know, as a timeline, I know that was one of your questions. We would submit again an alternative or two to the board. The board would discuss those. At one of our previous meetings, you know, we said that the earliest that could possibly be is February. It's really unlikely it would be February. You know, we're probably talking about June. February is just too soon probably to develop alternatives. But that's the kind of time frame that we're in. Yeah, and I think that kind of covers. I did not prepare a statement for you because I came to listen, to not talk. But I'm happy to answer specific questions. But those were my reactions to what I've heard, and again, I really appreciate the time that you're all taking and that you've taken in the other two meetings and in all the meetings you've had in between. So I'll turn it back. Well, I guess if Julie or Michelle want to add anything, and if not, I will turn it back over to Allie.
Thank you, Chancellor White. I'll reiterate his ask if those others want to add.
So Stephanie had her hand up, I think.
Yeah, I just had a question. Thank you very much. You know, it's pretty clear you've got a process for assessing the gravel and then bringing that before the Board of Regents. But you know, I sort of have two questions for you. But one, what we haven't seen or heard, or I haven't heard tonight, is I think what this group is asking for is a serious opportunity to explore the options for alternatives. So you're digging boreholes over there to measure your resource. We're asking you to dig a borehole metaphorically with this group, and beyond the advocacy group, you've also got the borough, and I won't speak for the city of Palmer. I would never deign to speak for Mr. Moosey or Ms. Valerius over there, but they've sent you a letter too and said the same thing. We want to sit down. So what does it take for the university to sit down, including the lands division? Because I say that just not that you have to do that, but it seems like that's been the sticking point before, to have this exploration of many of the opportunities that have been discussed here and see if those are serious. So when you come before the board, you've got good information on not just the gravel pit, but all this. So what does it take? When can we do that? How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of options. I mean, I'm happy to, and in fact, you know, maybe I sent the email to wrong addresses, but I think we can start a dialogue now, and if if that, I can connect with Mr. Moosey or anyone else and have that, or the farm trust or the land trust that we just heard from, to talk about that. We can wait until we are able to get through the information from the resource, so we kind of know what we're talking about. But there's all kinds of options, especially that Great Land Trust pointed out, of sales, leases, exchanges, easements, to find a win-win. And I guess with this group, I'm not sure where the best point of contact is to facilitate that. If it's through the city or through the borough, I'm happy to do that. Or if it's through one of the trust, the Great Land Trust or the Farm Trust. But I'm open to suggestions on who among this group, or if there's separate dialogues that go along parallel. Do you have some recommendations?
I'll let other people speak up, but I think if we had it could be any number of those, and we could have a facilitator. I think from the borough, we would bring in our lands department and our planning department to see what the possibilities were there. So if the university want to coordinate that and have all the stakeholders, I think it's just important to have the right people in the room for the discussion, or that's the advocacy group as facilitator, and all the people are connected here. But I'll let other people see whatever yeah, anyways, a couple different options there, and I think either would work.
Great. And not to voluntold, but we did check in on that before this meeting about who is the best point of contact for the advocacy group moving forward. And Amy, I'm seeing you nod knowingly. Yeah, that'll be you. Would you mind putting your email address here in the chat? And so just to clarify, Chancellor White, to your question of who is the best person to follow up with to initiate that longer conversation, that'll be Amy. And so I'll leave it to you too as one next step to follow up following the meeting.
And I would just add, I think timeline-wise, it'd be better to do that sooner rather than later. So you have that. I know you're juggling a lot, but.
Well, that's right. I'll email Amy tomorrow. And like I said, I think I did, but I will email you tomorrow, Amy.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Allie, could I make a comment to dovetail with that, please?
By all means.
While and how I put my hand down, I'm not sure. I'll figure that out. But just to dovetail on what Stephanie just said, and to kind of put the Chancellor on the spot a bit, can we get your commitment, Chancellor White, to not move forward to bringing something to the Board of Regents. I believe they have their next meeting in November, but earlier in a meeting you had stated nothing would be done probably on this until February. So I guess I'd like for you to put on record that prior to moving forward with any recommendation to the board, that you would have this opportunity to sit down to examine other alternatives prior to any meeting in February and any proposal being put forward.
Well, yeah, I mean, we will look at alternatives before we would propose anything to the board. And of course, I propose things to President Pitney, and President Pitney proposes them to the board. So, I mean, there's another step in there. But, you know, so the answer to your question is yes, we will look at other alternatives before proposing anything to the board. I don't know what the universe of alternatives could possibly be. So I guess I wouldn't commit to looking at all of the alternatives because I don't know what that means, but I would, commit that we will look at alternatives before proposing anything to the president, who would propose ultimately to the board. But yeah.
And I confirm that answer.
Okay, thank you. You all heard it right here, right now. No.
Thank you both. Elida?
Yep, I'm just going to jump in quickly. Thank you so much, Chancellor White and President Pitney, for clearly hearing us, listening to us today, and for your response. I do have a question. The term win-win has been tossed around a little bit. I think we've made it clear, and I say we, I believe collectively for all of the stakeholders here today, that our win-win would be to figure out a way to fund the university and to preserve our greenbelt, meaning taking the gravel pit completely off the table. Now, I understand that you cannot commit to that today, but I'm wondering if you could talk about what a win-win situation realistically looks like to you.
Well, I'll let President Pitney weigh in. To me, what the compact asked us to do, the compact with the governor and between the governor and the board that cut our budget, was to explore other revenue sources, including resource development on UA lands. What the point of that part of the compact is to find revenue sources that are other than the state general fund to support higher education in Alaska, not just UAF, but UAA and UAS as well. And to me, what is most valuable to our being able to provide education and research for Alaskans and research of health research, farm research, is a stable revenue source. And a stable revenue source, tuition is one of our revenue sources. The state general fund is one of our revenue sources. So, to the point of somebody's couple of comments today were about a gravel mine is a one and done kind of thing. We're selling facilities, and somebody asked, what one of the questions on that list I got was, what other things are you doing to monetize? And we have a whole list of things that are on the board's agenda of buildings that we're selling, animals that we've gotten rid of to try to raise revenues. And the things, it's the one-time sales are helpful, but they're not kind of long-term sustainability for the university. They're something that's helping on the short term. So of something that's really would be useful to us here at the university is a long-term sustainable source of revenue. So if there's other ways to help that, and it obviously doesn't come from one place, a diversified revenue source is even better for us. So if there's a way that things can be monetized to provide that diversified, more stable revenue source, that would be most helpful. And I'll defer to President Pitney if she's got other thoughts.
I think you've covered it well, Chancellor White. that stability is really where the university has to look after, this cut, along with the cuts just prior to it, has brought our base funding down by 1/3, $120 million. And so we're working to redesign our programs into this much, much smaller footprint. And that stability is so important. And so, if gravel extraction is worth something at one time, how could we spread that out to have that revenue come across every year, year in, year out, that, in a sense, a net present value was the same. And while we preserve that land in the way that most meets the community, but we are turning over every leaf. I very, very much appreciated the comments about the win-win and the comments about the alternatives that exist. And we're open to that. And it's just how can we create that stable revenue source long term that then turns into either the service for farming education or One Health education or all of the other education components. The university is absolutely fundamental to our economic recovery in the long run. And while we're wrestling with this funding reduction, we're also very much focused on serving the needs of our industry and our state in terms of programs. And that's really, my focus is how do we keep the programs that we have serving the state? And not everybody values every program, but everybody values some program. And so we're trying to keep those program access points open. And but really, really absolutely appreciate this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, President Pitney and Chancellor White. I'll note that we have about 20 minutes left. I would like to see if there are any additional questions that the Advocacy Committee would like to pose. And I want to give UA leadership an opportunity to ask some questions of everybody else here as well. Wes, go ahead.
Thank you, Chancellor White and President Pitney, for talking through the alternatives and a possible win-win scenario. One thing going to alternatives that we've been curious about is, has UAF or UA Lands Department been looking at other lands to monetize? How has that search gone? And and looking at places that maybe have a little bit less, either public access or a huge constituency behind it.
Well, I will, and maybe I'll turn it over to Vice President Rizek to say a few words about the university overall. But UAF is looking at land we own in Seward. It's right downtown, so there's a passion there. Kodiak, Fairbanks have been, and then we've got some smaller properties down in Halibut Cove, across from Homer, and some other places that we're looking at across the state. And those have all been noticed by us to the board as things that, as the Board of Regents, as things that we're looking at. So, yeah, I mean, like President Pitney said, that there is every program at the university has a constituency, and every land has a constituency as well. But appreciate the question, and again, it gets back to me to Murph's point of walking through Kramer's Field in Fairbanks, which is kind of the A Trails place here, and seeing the gravel pit. So appreciate that. But Michelle, do you want to comment on more broadly the lands, maybe the timber sale and some other things that this system has to do?
And if it's helpful, Chancellor White, when you email Amy tomorrow, we can share the most updated monetization report. So every board meeting that we have, we meet with the Facilities and Land Management Committee of the Board of Regents and go over all of the properties that we're looking at for monetizing. So we will share a copy of that report. And so it'll have information in there from each university. And then in addition to that, we just completed our annual report for fiscal year FY20. And so it can provide the other monetization efforts that we've done in timber and other mineral development. So I think those will be two good resources for the group here to review.
Great. And you're coming up as Peggy O'Brien, but I know that's not your first name.
No, she's upstairs with the Beagle. I just have a question. And by the way, Chancellor, in 1976, I helped build some of the original boardwalks on the Kramer's Field. So it's near and dear to me as well. I'm assuming that the sources of revenue through the gravel extraction would be a land lease and then a royalty payment. Are there other aspects to how you would actually obtain revenue?
Yeah, I mean, typically in gravel mines, it's a royalty payment. Could be a land lease and a royalty payment, but yeah, I mean, it's a fixed lifetime, although it depends on then what that land is turned into, kind of what future uses are. But, you know, like I said, in a previous meeting, of course, you know, the first step is to know what the resource is, and the second step is to decide whether it's economically viable, and then kind of what would be, how would it be monetized. So the how it would be monetized depends on whether it's viable to mine and whether there's a resource there at all. But go ahead.
Do you have any estimates at this point as to what the revenue generation potential is from a gravel operation, or is it too early to tell?
Yeah, I mean, we are just received, you know, the report from the contractor today. I haven't even had a chance to open it yet, but we'll have a look at it and get some estimates, and then, you know, go from there. So, you know, we're kind of just starting that to, like I said, as soon as we have a chance to look at it and share it and talk about it, we'll have a better idea.
That would be good information to have, to see what we're up against as far as trying to strike some kind of balance with you.
Great. Alida?
Yes, I have another one. And it is one of the ones that we had sent to you ahead of time, but it seems like a pretty applicable one at this point. I'm curious, and our committee is curious, what the ultimate factors will be in your decision on how to proceed with this land, the Matanuska Greenbelt land at the farm, and what kind of weight will those factors carry in your decision?
Well, I'll say a few things and then turn it over to President Pitney. And it's kind of funny, I keep pausing to say President Pitney because, of course, she calls me Dan and I call her Pat and Michelle, and so try to use the formal titles here. But in essence, I'll turn it over to Pat here in just a second. But you know, it's just like all of the decisions at the university. You know, what programs we add, what programs we take away. Part of it is financial. We are a public university. Obviously, community input matters a lot. I think I maybe mentioned at this last one that our College of Engineering and Mines had proposed eliminating the mining engineering program entirely. And the mining engineering program was proposed to be eliminated. It's our most expensive program. We heard heard it would have saved a lot of money, but we heard loud and clear from the mining industry that they need mining engineers. Likewise, Alaska Native Languages is a really important program. It is really important in Alaska and to our mission at the university that we support and continue to maintain our Alaska Native programs, even though they're our language programs, even though they're expensive. And it's so, you know, the community input and value to mission. There are a lot of factors that go into all of the decisions that we make, and so the same factors would go into what our disposition is towards land at the Palmer Farm. So I wouldn't underestimate. I mean, I think that's your point. I wouldn't underestimate the value of community input and other values held by the community and to this kind of One Health that Jill was referring to.
I think only adding on to that is we went through a fiscal context discussion with the board in their September meeting, and you know, at the end of that conversation, you know, put out a list of things that will guide our decisions. And it's, you know, one is, you know, probably to me, the primary one is we don't want to be disruptive to our students. We are, that's key. But also the reaction from external stakeholders and the reaction from internal stakeholders are also key factors. And then how, you know, the kind of the potential for savings or the potential for revenue. So we went through that whole kind of series of kind of decision criteria, and it's in a sense it's a mix of weighting. How much would you make versus how many screaming people do you have? Well, there's a lot of screaming people and you're not making much. Well, not so much, but it's fluid, but the criteria are out there. And, you know, if you're, you know, that set of criteria could be sent along as well.
Great. I can feel 8:30 approaching. You cannot, like, even in the Zoom room, the energy is going like this. So I want to leave room for a couple more questions before we conclude. Would like to offer the chance to the university to pose any questions to the organizing group or anybody here.
Well, I guess I think my main question is, I think, been answered, and that is, how is the best way for us to engage with you? Because you know, that's a bit of a challenge with lots of different organizations. But I heard work through Amy, and that's what I will do. And Amy, I will apologize. I did find the email that I sent you, and I'll send that along. But it did not specifically ask for how we coordinate this, and so my apologies for that. But I will reach out and we can set something up and go from there. But that would be really helpful to us, to me in particular.
Great, thank you.
I have a question, Allie, if possible.
Yes, I'm trying to see who's trying to speak, but yes, absolutely, go ahead.
I am wondering how we might be able to help you, President Pitney and Chancellor White, as far as advocating for getting the remainder of the acreage that is due to the university, because that would help solve the problem too, your fiscal challenge. My understanding, there's quite a few that we still need to get from the federal government. How can we help you with that?
So where we're at right now is there is a piece of legislation that has been introduced at both the Senate and the House side, or Senate and Congress side in DC. That piece of legislation now has to find a vehicle that actually passes. So the best thing you can do is to write to your to Murkowski and to Sullivan and to Young and tell them how important this is. And in terms of the people in the land trust, when we get serious pushback from external entities out, lower 48 entities pushing back on this concept, helping us defend our position to get our land grant would be helpful. Once the bill passes, or kind of in parallel with the bill passing, we also need to get the governor to sign off on our land selections. So that this allows 360,000 acres for the university to select in the 5 million acres that has not yet been conveyed to the state. So it's getting that, encouraging Department of Natural Resources to do their review in a timely manner, and getting it through the governor, which the governor has been super supportive of this land bill. Wrote a letter to the congressional delegation in support of the exact legislation. But then we have to get the selections approved and through at the governor level. So helping push that is a key. But once the land comes to us, then it's our job to monetize it. So whether we sell it, we mine it, we create recreational opportunities in some way, shape, or form, or subdivide it, sell it, whatever the monetizing is. From that position, once we monetize it, it goes into our endowment, and then we live on the 5% of that endowment long term. So there's a lot of time consideration in this. It's not a silver bullet, but it is absolutely essential to that long-term stability. And so very much appreciate anything people can do to encourage the fruition of that possibility of the land grant.
And I would just add to that, it is prime time. There's 12 days before the election. This is a motivated group to reach out to your congressional delegation on this. And just to put it in perspective, and I think most of the people know here, some on Facebook may not realize there's about 150,000 acres that the university has. So when we're talking about an additional 360,000, we're talking well over 200% more. So it does take time. It is not a quick magic bullet, but it's far overdue. And this is right before an election, it's a really good time to hold the feet to the fire of your elected officials. So I encourage this group to do that, to reach out to our congressional delegation in the next week.
Great, thank you. We are at 3 minutes left, everybody. And so with that, I'd like to move us into conclusion and next steps. A couple things that are coming up in the chat. There is a lot of interest in learning or being part of what is emailed, the big email that will be sent tomorrow. So Don Biot with Backcountry Horse Association would like to see that criteria that is emailed to Amy, and Representative Johnson would also like to be copied on communication. One thing I'd like to ask is, Amy, you have agreed to be the on-point person for this group, and I'm assuming that doesn't just mean you'll be brokering between the Farmland Trust and the university. You are the representative from the organizing group who has helped pull this meeting together, correct? Great. Anything else that the organizing committee would like to say on next steps following this meeting?
I just had a quick comment to President Pitney regarding you saying that
depending on how many people are screaming versus, you know, the value and the cost. I guess my question would be, how many people do you need to hear from? Because this is a very, this is a powerful community that has stopped many things and created many beautiful things in my 15 years of time in Palmer. And so I guess I look forward to hearing from you tomorrow, Dan, Chancellor White, and Pat. I guess if you have some number that you want to throw at us, I would accept that challenge. And this advocacy committee reaches very far and very wide, as demonstrated tonight. So we look forward to knowing what those numbers are so we can get back to you with the solution.
Yeah, there's no number. We're very encouraged we can find a win-win where we can find that stable revenue source and find a solution that meets all of our needs. I think there are good ideas here, but that stability and that revenue it's a very important component as we're trying to fit into this new shoe size we have.
Just a quick piggyback on Amy, that you know, in terms of people screaming, and I supporting your programs is, I mean, that is key. But if everybody raised their hand who's an alumni or an employee or has kids that might go to the university, you think, yeah, I think with this property, there's a unique opportunity to get money in other ways, and maybe it won't be maximizing. So, but if you support your programs and you lose the community support, that might be something to weigh along with, you know, what factors you're looking at. And you've got a whole group of connected people in a really small state that would be pulling for you here, if we're all pulling in the same direction, trying to solve those problems. And if there's a link that can be sent out for how to communicate on that land transfer, I would love to have that, and be happy to add my voice to getting that done. So thank you.
Great, thanks.
Great. All right, everybody, we are a little bit over time. Some things that I heard, and then I'm going to hand it to Elida and Amy to close us off. First of all, thank you all so much for spending 2 hours of your evening here. There are clearly so many very rich connections to this place, from farming to trails and health and wildlife, generations, family. The list goes on, and I just in hearing the perspectives that were shared, it's really clear how much effort and how much care is tied to the Greenbelt, and how everybody, there was a really consistent message of a desire for a win-win solution. And pretty amazing to see UA leadership come and be really willing and ready to dive right into discussing those next steps and how this group can come to solution together. So really thank you all. I think it's a really admirable community effort and a model, honestly, for, I think somebody said it, particularly in these times, to kind of experience this kind of dialogue is heartening. So this is work that you all did together. I appreciate it. I thank you for it. And with that, I'd like to hand it back to you, Elida and Amy, to close us out.
So I just wanted to throw out some thank yous again. Thank you to all of our stakeholders and speakers for your passion and for your commitment to the Greenbelt. Thanks to all of the listeners on the live stream tuning in, or those who are listening to this recording. Your investment in our mission is a huge support. Huge thank you again to President Pat Pitney, Chancellor White, Vice Chancellor Julie Queen, Regent Garrett, and Jody Anderson. We are so grateful that you are willing to come to the table and chat with us today and hear our testimonies and our voices. It means a lot to this very close and passionate community, so thank you. Thank you to Dave Mitchell from Great Land Trust for providing perspective, viable solutions, past successes with which we can move forward. We look forward to continuing this conversation with you. And finally, a huge thank you to the Mat-Su Health Foundation for speaking today. I know that Elizabeth Ripley had to step away, but her passion and support, and also for the sponsorship so that we could bring Allie Harvey in from Information Insights. Thank you, Allie, for your guidance, professionalism, and the facilitation today. It's been great.
And Elida nailed it. Nothing more to add. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Look forward to hearing from you tomorrow, Chancellor White.